Are you noticing your car insurance rate creep up even without tickets or claims? You're not alone. That's why there's Jerry, your proactive insurance assistant. Jerry handles the legwork by comparing quotes side by side from over 50 top insurers, so you can confidently hit buy. No spam calls, no hidden fees. Jerry even tracks rates and alerts you when it's best to shop. Drivers who save with Jerry could save over $1,300 a year. Don't settle for higher rates. Download the Jerry app or visit jerry.ai/ACAST today.
Why choose a Sleep Number smart bed?
Can I make my site softer?
Can I make my site firmer?
Can we sleep cooler?
Sleep Number does that. Cools up to 8 times faster and lets you choose your ideal comfort on either side. Your Sleep Number setting. Enjoy personalized comfort for better sleep night after night. It's our Black Friday sale. Recharge this season with a bundle of cozy, soothing comfort. Now only $17.99 for our C2 mattress and base, plus free premium delivery. Prices higher in Alaska and Hawaii. Check it out at a Sleep Number store or sleepnumber.com today.
Hello and welcome to episode number 288 of Real Life Ghost Stories. And to kick things off this week, I would like to say thanks to some of our newest Patreon subscribers. I would like to thank Levi Eve Bauho, Jen McSee, Alana Nidri, Jackie, Maggie Orlando, Sophie Wong, Heather H, Lauren Connolly, Grace L, Nathan Cannon, Aveen1234, Emma Reese, Stephanie Peterson, Zachariah Perdue, Hannah Levy, Darling Potato, Kizzy Eles, Sammy Foxley, Samir, and Miles. Thank you so much for subscribing to the Patreon. I love you and appreciate you every single day. Which brings us to our film review this week, and our film review is Frankenstein. Frankenstein was released in 2025. It has 7.6 out of 10 on IMDb and 86% on Rotten Tomatoes. Oscar-winning director Guillermo del Toro adapts Mary Shelley's classic tale of Victor Frankenstein, a brilliant but egotistical scientist who brings a creature to life in a monstrous experiment that ultimately leads to the undoing of both the creator and his tragic creation. Right. I'm saying this now. I know that this review is going to be divisive, okay? And I just want everyone to remember that film reviews are subjective. Sometimes I'm not going to like things that you like, and that doesn't mean that I didn't understand the film or that I'm a bad person or that you need to send me horrible messages, okay? And I'm just saying that now. Sometimes we don't like the same things, and that's why art is interesting, and that is okay, because I was not a massive fan of this film. I also think it's important to point out as well that I haven't read Frankenstein. I've never read it, which surprises me all the time, and I really should read it because apparently it's short, so it's not going to take a million years to read. I haven't read Frankenstein, so I can't comment on the differences between the book and the film. I can't comment on whether it was faithful to it. I can't comment on whether the changes that were made were positive or negative. I just haven't read it, so I don't know. But here's what I do know, okay? I love Del Toro, and I think that he has the most wonderful dark fairy tale imagination. So Pan's Labyrinth, for example, is one of my favourite films. Like, I adore it. I think it's brilliant. And I think he brought a lot of that like dark, gory fairy tale magic to this adaptation, which I was here for, right? And I thought the costuming and the colour palette, oh, it was just beautiful to look at. There are gorgeous, striking moments that I genuinely wanted to like pause the cinema and take pictures of. There's this beautiful series of funerals that happen, and the coffins are like these gorgeous marble coffins where the person's face is out, and oh my god, it just looks incredible. It is stunning to look at. And the costumes brought so much drama to it. They were just bold and colourful and beautiful, and yeah, a lot of fairy tale whimsy going on. And I thought it was just visually stunning. Like the opening scenes where we start by seeing the ship that's trapped in the ice, right? This huge wooden ship in this barren, icy wilderness. And then you see the creature silhouetted on the horizon. Oh, I was like, yes, this is going to be good. Like, this is going to be so fun to watch. And I really wanted it to be like big, bold and atmospheric. And you know what? Visually, that is what Del Toro did. In terms of like characters, I thought the character of Frankenstein was brilliantly portrayed. He was, I think it was Oscar Isaacs is the guy's name who played him. But he was like arrogant, like super intelligent, but also charismatic, single-minded, like super self-centered. And I think it would have been really easy to turn him into like a caricature. But he was complicated. You know, you watched it and you were like, oh, you are complicated and I really don't like you. He's thoroughly unlikable without being like a campy villain. But you also understood his thought process. He was like, I've got this great idea and I'm pretty sure I can see it through and people aren't supporting me, so I'm going to do it no matter what. There is a level of like self-aggrandizing about him that is really fascinating. And watching his kind of almost immediate frustration with the creature that he creates. That this creature isn't immediately what he thought the creature would be. And he finds it really frustrating and sort of is like, oh, I can't be arsed with this actually. And it says to you as the watcher that nothing will ever be enough for Dr. Frankenstein. And that's a really interesting thing to portray without saying it overtly on the screen. And I think I really liked the sequence of the creation of the creature too. I thought it was like gory and, you know, over the top and a bit ridiculous at times. But I loved it. I thought it was really fun to watch. There are lots of great scenes where Dr. Frankenstein animates like bits of bodies and, you know, is trying to figure out how this animation of, you know, this series of corpses is going to work. And there's just lots of great moments with that. And you can see that they really had fun thinking about how they were going to portray that along the line. I did also think that the creation of the creature was weirdly anticlimactic. And I don't really know why they did that. Like, it was obviously meant to be a choice. And it was an interesting choice. I don't know if it particularly worked. I guess because we're almost primed to want to see Frankenstein being like, it's alive! And the creature like rising up from the table. And we didn't get that in this film. And I found it weirdly it was just a weird anticlimax. But that was my likes, right? We're going to go into the dislikes. And like I said, I know lots of people loved this film. And if you look at the comments on Instagram or on Facebook, we're pretty much split down the middle. People either loved it or they were like, oh, yeah, didn't really care for it. Wasn't really that bothered by it. And I'm in the latter camp. I just wasn't hugely enamoured by it. I did see somebody comment on Instagram and say that it was all style over substance, and I kind of agreed. Like, I loved the beginning bit where we were watching Frankenstein trying to figure out how to animate these corpses, but then after that, I just didn't enjoy a lot of it. I thought it was really way too long. I just was watching going, actually, I'm quite bored. And I think it needed at least like half an hour cut off it. And when it slowed down, I felt like it really slowed down and I wasn't engaged at all. And I really disliked Mia Goth's performance. I just didn't think it was very good. I usually like her. I think she's quite interesting to watch. But in this instance, I was like, God, you are actually quite nothingy in this. There's a great moment where she sort of floats down the stairs in this big old abandoned castle in a see-through nightdress holding some candles. And I mean, that is ultimately like romantic gothic at its absolute core. But I just didn't particularly like her performance. And I thought it could have been an amazing role and an amazing performance. And I mean, look, maybe they wanted it more understated, but I didn't think she was good to watch. And I am going to say something that seems to be going against the grain, but I did not enjoy Jacob Elordi's portrayal of the creature. There, I said it, okay? I thought it was lacking. And maybe he just didn't have enough to work with. And I got they were I understood that with this portrayal of the creature, I understood they were going for sort of like a doe-eyed innocence, right? But it sort of weirdly annoyed me. He did a lot of fluttery eye acting to signify this innocence, and it wore thin. And it doesn't make a well-rounded character. I wanted more from the creature. And to be really frank, I wasn't like... I didn't feel the pity and the empathy for the creature that I kind of felt like I was meant to feel. I didn't think it was the performance of a lifetime. I mean, people are talking about his performance like it was out of this world, and I just didn't see it. I thought he was... I just didn't grab me. I wasn't that interested in his portrayal of the creature. Although I will say I thought he looked really cool. I liked the design of the creature, and I thought he looked really cool. So, I mean, that's something. And my final point that I wrote down that I sort of deeply disliked was the dream sequences. I'm just an avid dream sequence hater. I was the same when I watched Weapons and there was that weird dream sequence with the AK-47 over the house. I find dream sequences, they just annoy me. And that's just a personal gripe. You know, I'm sure in the book those dream sequences are quite important. But they annoyed me. So really, I mean, as a story, Frankenstein is obviously a classic. And I think it is worth a watch. Definitely worth a watch. Do I think it's this amazing film? No. I think it's beautiful to look at. And I am going to give it 3 stars. It's definitely worth a watch. But I don't think you should go into it expecting too much from it. So that is 3 stars for Frankenstein. Today's episode is brought to you by Uncommon Goods. Now look, I hate to be the one to say it, but the countdown is well and truly on and holiday shopping season is officially here, and Uncommon Goods takes the stress out of gifting with thousands of unique high quality finds that you won't see anywhere else. When you shop at Uncommon Goods, you're supporting artists and small independent businesses. Many of their handcrafted products are made in small batches, so shop now before they sell out this holiday season. And when I was browsing Uncommon Goods, the woven astrology zip pouch caught my eye. It is beautiful and perfect for the astrology fanatic in your life. So don't wait. Cross those names off your list before the rush. To get 15% off your next gift, go to uncommongoods.com/ghoststories. That's uncommongoods.com/ghoststories for 15% off. Uncommon Goods. We're all out of the ordinary.
Residents at Brightview Senior Living Communities enjoy enhanced possibilities, independence, and choice. Brightview Dulles Corner and Great Falls offer vibrant senior independent living, assisted living, and memory care services through various daily programs, chef-prepared meals, safety and security, transportation, resort-style amenities, and high-quality care. Take financial possession of your apartment by December 31st, 2025 and save. Discover more at brightviewseniorliving.com. Equal housing opportunity.
If you're a maintenance supervisor at a manufacturing facility and your machinery isn't working right, Grainger knows you need to understand what's wrong as soon as possible. So when a conveyor motor falters, Grainger offers diagnostic tools like calibration kits and multimeters to help you identify and fix the problem. With Grainger, you can be confident you have everything you need to keep your facility running smoothly. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Hey, Ryan Reynolds here, wishing you a very happy half-off holiday, because right now Mint Mobile is offering you the gift of 50% off unlimited. To be clear, that's half price, not half the service. Like, Mint is still premium unlimited wireless for a great price. So that means a half day, yeah? Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Speed slow after 35 gigabytes if network's busy. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.
Are you noticing your car insurance rate creep up even without tickets or claims? You're not alone. That's why there's Jerry, your proactive insurance assistant. Jerry handles the legwork by comparing quotes side by side from over 50 top insurers, so you can confidently hit buy. No spam calls, no hidden fees. Jerry even tracks rates and alerts you when it's best to shop. Drivers who save with Jerry could save over $1,300 a year. Don't settle for higher rates. Download the Jerry app or visit jerry.ai/ACAST today.
Frankenstein. Which brings us to our story this week. Now, our story this week is taking us down under because we are going to Australia. Now, it's been a while since we've done an Australian story, and we do have quite a number of Australian listeners. So, hello, Australian listeners. I'm just going to say I'm really sorry if I pronounce things wrong. Please forgive me. But we are going to dive into the story of the Black Mountain, and you already know it's going to be good. So, let's get straight into it. So the story goes, the mountain itself was created by two brothers. Both of these men were literal giants, and at the time of this story taking place, were currently locked in an epic battle of ginormous proportions. As it unfortunately so often goes, the deadly feud had been caused by wandering hearts and impulsive minds, and now there was only one way out. Both of the brothers had fallen in love with the same woman. There could be no sharing her, and we must assume that her opinion on the matter didn't weigh particularly heavily in the minds of her would-be suitors either. So instead of coming to terms with their unfortunate situation, or even letting the woman herself choose which brother she preferred, each man wanted to claim the woman they loved for themselves, no matter the consequences. The brothers, still furious with each other, gathered big black rocks and thick boulders in preparation to resolve their ongoing issue. They would settle this heartbreaking love triangle once and for all with a duel to the death. Everything was at stake. Whoever left the battlefield as the champion would claim not only victory, but the woman they loved as well. So on one fateful day, the brothers met, and then hurled the large stones they had already collected into piles at one another. The battle was fierce, with each side drawing blood. But by the end of things, instead of one of them walking away with the woman they were fighting over, both brothers had been killed by the other's hand. When the dust had finally settled on the ordeal, the woman, the jewel, and even the brothers' bodies themselves had faded away into history and vanished from the very world that we live in. Now they exist only in folklore and legend, but one key character of this tragic story has remained behind to remind us of what was lost that day. That character, so to speak, are the rocks that the brothers collected to use in the battle against one another. Still gathered in a large pile, these boulders form a nearly silent testament to the epic tragedy in the shape of the Black Mountain in Queensland, Australia. Who knows? Maybe a few of them were the very same rocks that dealt the finishing blow to one of the brothers. But if so, these unusual boulders have safely guarded their secrets. Buried deep in the heart of the Black Mountain National Park, this protected mountain seems to sprout out of nowhere from dense, thick brush and green eucalyptus trees. The surrounding nature around the mountain is thick with plants and wildlife, yet none of them venture into the almost pitch-black stones that form the mountain itself. It's almost like even the plant life of Queensland is too afraid to cross over the boundary and into the shadowy mountain's domain. The massive, solid granite boulders all around the mountain can measure 20 feet long and gather to peak at an impressive 900 feet above the surrounding forest land. Scientists believe that the granite that makes up these boulders was created over 250 million years ago by magma from ancient volcanic activity. Since then, and in the many years that have followed the boulder's creation, the earth, soil and vegetation that may once have covered the mountain have all eroded away. What remains is the hard granite itself, which now looks like large deposits have simply been dropped into the wilderness by some unimaginably large entity. All that is left of what could have potentially been an even larger mountain is the jumbled mess of boulder upon boulder. This tangled web of rock creates an almost impenetrable labyrinth of dark-coloured rubble that looks like it has been dragged from the very bowels of hell itself. To add to this incredibly sinister and otherworldly appearance, the Black Mountain is said to howl and hiss. Rushing through the long, winding tunnels of the mountain often come sudden bursts of wind. The stones spend all day baking in the intense sun, cooking both themselves and anything trapped within them. But then, as the day ends and the stones cool, the hot air still inside comes bursting out of the tunnels, making them howl and moan almost like a gigantic organ. Day in and day out, this eerie pattern repeats itself, with the silence of the mountain being broken seemingly out of nowhere with a disembodied moan or the howl of what appears to be some otherworldly creature buried deep within the ground. Then sometimes, with the blinding heat still scorching the stones, it starts raining. This drastic temperature shift then causes the stones to suddenly shrink in size, which in turn creates cracks and fissures in the stones themselves. With each repetition of this naturally occurring pattern, those fissures grow bigger and bigger until the rocks give a hiss and then finally explode. For the witnesses of this shocking event, it'll appear like these stones have just self-destructed for seemingly no reason and without any warning. And who could blame anyone for running back to the safety of civilization after encountering a situation like that? But, as if all of this wasn't enough to frighten even the bravest mountain explorers already, the Black Mountain has another card up its sleeve to play in the hopes that no one will be tempted to trespass across the threshold into where they don't belong. The Black Mountain smells. And I don't mean in the playground insult kind of way either. Deep below the surface, sulphur and other noxious gases still bubble and brew, ready to cause havoc at the drop of a hat. These terribly foul-smelling odours travel along the winding tunnels and corridors to sneak back out into the world above, where unfortunate passers-by can be affronted by a stench that smells like death incarnate. Which is quite convenient, considering who is said to call the mountain his devilish home. Those who venture too close to the mountain and are lucky enough to live to tell the tale come back speaking of unnatural entities and strange occurrences. Known as Australia's Bermuda Triangle, a large number of people have reportedly gone missing while either passing through or staying on the mountain. According to reports, compasses and other navigational equipment on planes are known to malfunction when close to the mountain. When given the choice, many pilots will simply refuse to fly over it. Planes and other aircrafts also often find themselves the victim of these abnormal winds and gases that come hurtling out of the rock face at any given moment, which in turn makes it incredibly treacherous for them to risk travelling over the mountain by air. A great number of strange lights and UFOs have also been reported in the area. But when it comes to the Black Mountain, instead of accounts from those who have been there and then returned, the most famous cautionary tales almost always include those who have wandered too close and are never seen or heard from again. The Kuku-Nyunkal people, the Aboriginal people who are native to the land, call the mountain Kalkajaka, which means the place of the spear. But another more looser translation of the name could be the Mountain of Death. The natives tell tales of evil spirits and demons lurking in the dark shadows of the mountain. But the most evil of them all is a wicked man, known simply as the Eater of Flesh. Back in the age when the human race was young, a local Kuku-Nyunkal woman once told a captivated group of tourists, there dwelt among the tribe a terrible medicine man whose name meant Eater of Flesh. According to these legends, this medicine man was fueled by a powerful but evil kind of magic. The price to pay for wielding it, however, was that it forced him to constantly crave human flesh. If left unchecked, this magic could whisk away even the tribe's strongest man. So in an attempt to safeguard the community, the tribe would offer up old women or someone who was very sick to appease the eater of flesh's never-ending appetite. For a long while, the people and the eater of flesh maintained this delicate peace. But the medicine man's hunger grew stronger every day, and he was beginning to tire of only eating the old and the weak. Then one day, lured in by terrible temptation, the eater of flesh happened upon the young chief while he slept, and forever broke his side of the bargain. The eater of flesh ate the young chief, but the tribe caught him in the act and banded together to chase the medicine man from the village for good. But the black magic that possessed the eater of flesh helped him escape from the people unharmed and transformed him into a monstrous snake. So the stories go, he now lives in the dark corridors of the Black Mountain, safe from the tribe that would kill him if they ever found him, but close enough to snatch up a wandering victim whenever his insatiable hunger drew him out of hiding. So the legends go. Ever since then, the eater of flesh has claimed an uncountable number of victims. He sometimes is able to temporarily ease his hunger with the occasional cow and goat, but it is still the flesh of man that he truly lusts after. Witnesses tell terrifying stories of victims being dragged into the mountain by large spectral hands, or being chased and harassed by shadowy spirits. These spirits are often said to be the eater of flesh in what remains of his human form. But, so they say, these spectres could also be the vengeful spirits of a tribe of Aborigines who were hunted down and killed in a nearby village by early European settlers. Those who dare to spend the night on the mountain and survive often talk about catching glimpses of these spectres in the beams of their torches, or hearing the sounds of human footsteps pacing around their tents long into the night. It's said that these spirits lure or chase their victims deeper into the mountain, where they are either picked off by a stronger entity or simply get lost in the dark, never-ending tunnels that run below the surface. For generations of oral tradition, the Aborigines have warned each other against the dangers of falling victim to the mountain. But the first documented disappearance case comes to us from 1877, when a courier by the name of Grainer ventured out in search of a lost calf. But Grainer, his horse, and the calf never returned. A large search was launched in the hopes of recovering Grainer, but it was like he had simply vanished into thin air. At the time, the long-standing legends of the Black Mountain had yet to worm their way into settlers' hearts and minds. So the general consensus was that Grainer, his horse, and the calf had, unfortunately, fallen into one of the chasms or tunnels hidden between the boulders and passed away. But it was only a few years after Grainer's disappearance that there would be another infamous case, and this time it involved multiple victims. The notorious Sugarfoot Jack and a few of his accomplices in crime had just been involved in a dangerous shootout when he and his cohorts evaded the police by hiding in the tunnels of the Black Mountain. Needless to say, the local police force were more than invested in recovering Sugarfoot Jack and his band of criminals, but despite extensive searches of the area, none of them were ever seen or heard from again. It was here that the Black Mountain began to form its more widespread and sinister reputation. But it, or perhaps the flesh-eating medicine man still said to live inside it, weren't through with the people of Queensland just yet. 13 years after the notorious disappearance of Sugarfoot Jack and his crew, a constable by the name of Ryan, who had been stationed at Cooktown, tracked down a wanted man all the way to the foot of the mountain. He then ventured inside, but neither he or the wanted man he had been tracking ever emerged. Other trackers, this time on the lookout for Ryan in case something had happened to him, followed the trail to the entrance of the cave, but found no traces of either him or the man that he'd been after inside. In more recent times, the owner of the Oakley Creek station headed into the mountains one Sunday morning to look for some of his cattle who had gone missing. Unsurprisingly, neither he nor his cattle came back. His partner, George Hawkins, alerted the local police about the situation before heading into the mountain himself, but by the time the police arrived, George had disappeared too. Now worried that the situation had the potential to get out of control, and wary of the mountain's burgeoning reputation, the police asked 2 Aborigine trackers to help them search the caves. 2 trackers went in, but only one came out, and the one who returned seemed to have lost his mind along the way. He wasn't able to tell the police what had happened to him or his partner, and claimed to have found neither hide nor hair of the 2 missing farmers who had gone in before them. After that incident and during the 1920s, 2 European cave explorers entered the caves in the hopes of solving the other documented disappearances, only to disappear themselves. Again, the police turned to 2 Aborigine trackers for help, but this time neither of the trackers would return from the mountain. Both the cave explorers and the trackers had vanished without a trace, and in one fell swoop, the eater of the flesh had claimed 4 new victims. The latest known disappearance was in 1932, when a backpacker by the name of Harry Page went missing while exploring the mountain. This time, however, the eater of flesh didn't claim his prize. I wish I could say that Harry was rescued, but chances are that the evil medicine man who had potentially lured him into a trap was simply interrupted before he could finish his meal. After extensive searches, Harry Page was discovered. Unfortunately, he wasn't found in time to save his life, but the authorities were able to recover his remains. But Harry Page's and the story of the many explorers who ventured into the Black Mountain is one that weighs heavily in the hearts and minds of the Kuku-Nyunkal people. To them, the Black Mountain is a sacred place. It plays a huge part in their culture and their heritage, not only as a cautionary tale about brothers at war with each other or the evils of black magic, but also as the final resting place for one of their tribes who were brutally murdered by early European settlers. For many of the Kuku-Nyunkal people, the interest in the mountain and the constant exploration by tourists is not only potentially dangerous and life-threatening, but is also incredibly disrespectful. When wanting to see the mountain up close yourself, it's better to travel with an Aborigine guide who will be able to traverse through the sacred sites without taking you to the more dangerous parts of the mountain, and will be able to make sure that your party travels a respectable distance away from the more sacred and culturally significant sites. Now listen, surely this is just a reminder that none of us should ever leave our houses, particularly not to go outside and ramble around in the wilderness climbing mountains that you shouldn't be climbing. Just stay at home, because you're going to get eaten by a giant snake. And in Australia, that's actually quite possible in a literal, natural sense, never mind a supernatural snake that has been eating people for generations, for centuries. What I find really interesting about Indigenous peoples' folklore all over the world, and by no means do I think that they're interchangeable, etc., right? Each individual culture has its own folklore, its own belief system, etc. But there are similarities across the board, which I find really interesting. So, for example, pretty much all cultures all over the world have folklore and superstitions about fairies, fairy lore, goblins, duendes, whatever you'd like to call it. Really, that gives me the heebie-jeebies. And when I was looking at this folklore about the flesh eater, I was reminded of 2 things. Firstly, the Native American folklore around the Wendigo. And the Wendigo was kind of a folkloric entity for Native American people where a human being ate human flesh and therefore was doomed. That's the shorthand version of it. And there are various descriptions of the Wendigo, but often it is portrayed as being this beast, humanoid beast with antlers, etc., hunting humans, terrifying. And I did think, wow, there's similarities there with the flesh-eating man, this person who has this insatiable appetite for human flesh that was a real person. And I think that's the really interesting thing about this folklore. It's not like it's an entity that's, appeared out of nowhere or came from the earth. It came from a human being. Also, I thought there was a kind of a striking similarity too to the idea of a skinwalker. And skinwalkers are particular to Navajo culture. And it is a person who is a malevolent or evil witch, who has the ability to transform itself into an animal, right? And basically, they want to cause harm. They can transform into animals like coyotes, foxes, various creatures, and they want to cause harm to living people. And I thought it was interesting that we had a person in this story too with great power that used that power for bad and then therefore, wants to do great evil to people. And obviously, like I said, I don't believe that folklore is interchangeable. I think that there are interesting similarities, though, that there are just fundamental basics in the way that we view the world or see the world, or in the lessons that we want to learn as cultures, and how we go about teaching through storytelling. And I also think it's really important to remember as well that often folklore comes from somewhere. It often comes from an actual story or an actual event. And there's two stories that always remind me of this. And the first is in the east of England, there is a story of a dragon. I think it's the dragon of Bude or Brood. And in that story, basically a dragon appears and the people of the cities, or the people of the villages rather, fight this dragon. And then it disappears into the water and appears in another village. And obviously it's dismissed as a dragon story. Of course it is, because it's like, dragons aren't real. But there is a school of thought that suggests that at the time, and this is true, in the Tower of London, there were crocodiles and alligators. They were kept in the Tower of London. The Tower of London famously had a zoo, essentially. And one of these crocodiles escaped, and it is believed that potentially that these people, this escaped crocodile, appeared after travelling via river. And obviously these people had never seen or heard of a crocodile before, so they're like, what the fuck is that? It's clearly a dragon. And they're fighting it and it goes back into the water. And then the story develops over time. And there's also a story that we covered many moons ago on the podcast in one of the really early episodes. I think it was about yowies and bunyips, which are Australian kind of Bigfoot folklore. But, there's stories in Aboriginal culture that were about folkloric stories about a great flood, for example. And then they found out in modern times that this story that had been passed down for generations and generations and generations as a story, as folklore, and was seen as Aboriginal folklore, was true. This great flood had really happened. Do I think, therefore, that two giants were kicking the shit out of each other and therefore a mountain was formed? No. Because I do think that obviously folklore is really useful for moral stories. Don't fall out, don't fall in love with the same person, brothers should work together. There'll be no victor if two brothers fall out. Like, that makes sense. But equally, if a person, an Indigenous person, says, stay away from that place because it's dangerous, let me tell you where I'm absolutely not going. That place. Not a hope. And like I said, there are stories about people who they go to camp out on the mountain and they're seeing shadow entities, figures out of the corner of their eye. They're seeing these big lumbering shadowy figures that disappear. They're hearing footsteps behind them. Like, sorry, if the mountain has exploding rocks, caverns and chasms that you can fall down into and never be seen again, and it smells, nature is telling you not to go there. And on top of that, the Indigenous people of the area are saying, yeah, wouldn't go there if I were you. Don't go there. Spooky shit is going on. Don't do it. And I don't necessarily believe, right, that all the people who disappeared on the mountain were eaten by this eater of flesh, right? I don't believe that. But I do believe it's clearly a very inhospitable terrain, and that people should not be going there willy-nilly without being really prepared to go there. And like I said, you know, these places are sacred. They are sacred to Indigenous people. They're not simply a tourist destination for people to run around with an EMP detector and, you know, try and speak to the ghosts of the people who have disappeared. Like, for Aboriginal people, this is where their ancestors are, first of all. It is very important. It is a sacred site. There are sacred places on that land, and that should just be respected, full stop. I would highly recommend, by the way, to look up pictures of the Black Mountain. It is striking. It's exactly as you think it would be. There's all this lush green vegetation and then this huge black mountain rising up out of the middle of it that really does look like it's been dropped out of the sky. It's just wild. And I can fully understand why people would want to visit and explore. Like, genuinely can fully understand. It looks amazing. It's got this rich history. It's got crazy stories attached to it. It also has an intense Indigenous person's history attached to it. So all that legend and folklore. So I understand why people want to visit it and people want to go there. And there's a great article from abc.net.au, a news article, and it's linked in the notes for this episode, and I would highly recommend reading it, where in this article Aboriginal people are saying, don't go here running around. This is our sacred space. If you want to go, there are Aboriginal guides who will bring you around, who will show you sacred sites, who will make sure that your visit is respectful and that you don't get whisked off by a giant spectral snake. And I'm just a big advocate for not camping and not exploring the mountains and stuff anyway. I just think it's a waste of time. It's dangerous. You're going to get eaten by something. You're going to fall down a hole. You're going to get exploded by a rock. Like, none of it's good. I just wouldn't recommend it. When I say things like that, I am obviously only joking. Go out and explore. But do it in a nice way that's respectful of the world around you and respectful of the land that you are on. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you here. As I said, the links to all the information in this episode are in the description of this episode. And if you would like to send in your story, you can do so by emailing it to reallifeghoststoriespodcast@gmail.com. You can also check out the website, reallifeghoststoriespodcast.com. And if you are desperate for some extra content, you can subscribe to the Patreon. That is patreon.com/reallifeghoststories, where for $5 a month or for $2 a month, you can get access to heaps of extra content, as well as every single main and mini episode completely ad-free. And on that note, I shall see you next time.
Why choose a Sleep Number smart bed?
Can I make my site softer?
Can I make my site firmer?
Can we sleep cooler?
Sleep Number does that. Cools up to 8 times faster and lets you choose your ideal comfort on either side. Your Sleep Number setting. Enjoy personalized comfort for better sleep night after night. It's our Black Friday sale. Recharge this season with a bundle of cozy, soothing comfort. Now only $17.99 for our C2 mattress and base, plus free premium delivery. Prices higher in Alaska and Hawaii. Check it out at a Sleep Number store or sleepnumber.com today.